Hello everyone, this is Eva Nolik-Smith with YogaUOnline, and I'm here today with Christine Kaoverii Weber, founder of Subtle Yoga. Kaoverii has been practicing yoga since she took her first yoga course in 6th grade from her hippie social studies teacher, which I think is such a great story. And you began teaching yoga in 1995, and you've been training teachers, yoga teachers, since 2003. And Kaoverii has trained extensively in a wide variety of yoga styles, and she founded Subtle Yoga to create a style of yoga with greater emphasis on some of the more subtle aspects of yoga practice. So she's particularly known for her innovative sequencing skills and her emphasis on not just yoga asana, but also pranayama, mudras, and even the integration of self-massage as part of our practice. Kaoverii trains by behavioral health professionals in the use of yoga in their clinical practices, and she is deeply committed to the adoption of yoga as a strategy for public health. She believes that the future of healthcare is preventative and integrative, with patient-centered care focusing on healing the whole person, mind, body, and spirit in the context of community, which is a beautiful vision and probably one of the best ways that yoga can get integrated into the healthcare system by approaching the people who work in the trenches, so to speak.
Yes, yes. I think there's scope for yoga teachers also to build that bridge, and scope for yoga professionals in the health world as well. I mean, I think that's going to be happening, but in the meantime, at least we need to start having people aware of the benefits of these practices. People who are working in the healthcare system.
Yeah, that's great. So we're here to talk about detoxification. And of course, that's a buzzword we hear everywhere. So tell us just, why is detoxification so important?
Yeah, it is a buzzword, and I think it's really important because it's kind of crucial. It's kind of fundamental to our health in general. Yeah, but I also think that there's different ways we need to consider what it means to detoxify. Of course, the word detoxification is used medically. I work in a rehab, and it's used for substance abuse, of course, right? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something different, and I think it's really important for people not to conflate medical detox with yoga detox.
Right.
Yeah.
Good.
And I also think that detox is used sometimes to mean a kind of a buzzword, kind of a code word that women will use to mean dieting. And I think we have to be really vigilant about what's going on in terms of disordered eating patterns and in terms of body image issues. When people want to detox, what does that really mean? So as yoga teachers, I think we have a responsibility to make sure that people are using detox in a responsible way and not in a cavalier way or a way that exacerbates any of their mental health conditions.
Yeah, great. So one of the things that's so interesting about detoxification is that all the systems of natural health, whether you go back to Ayurveda, which is 5,000 years old, or traditional Chinese medicine, they place great emphasis on detoxification. And in fact, Ayurveda, essentially with the concept of ama, which is considered the first step of the disease process, Ayurveda sort of parallels the ability to keep our channels open and free of toxic debris to the ability to stay healthy and retain our vitality and energy as we get older.
Right. Yeah, and of course, Ayurveda and yoga are sister sciences. And the yoga chikitsas that I learned when I was in India, ama is everything. Getting rid of that ama is really important. And so things like scraping your tongue in the morning which sounds gross, but it's different than just brushing your tongue. But that tongue scraper, I think, is important. I've even seen copper tongue scrapers, which are supposed to give you some, some of that essential metal, I guess.
Right.
But, so scraping the tongue, doing some of the water practices, like drinking lemon water, or they even have a practice you might have heard of course, that where you, after you do some fasting or some cleansing, then you drink salted water. It's like drinking seawater, and it flushes through the colon, flushes the intestine out. Yeah. So yeah, these practices and then of course there's the practices of cleaning the large intestine with enemas. There's neti pot to clean the ama in the nose. There's many of these practices. Even the scrubbing the skin, and traditionally, they use loofahs, but some kind of a scrubby, and we'll talk about dry brushing too, which doesn't come so much from India, but I think it's a good detox practice too. But scrubbing the skin, because the skin, of course, is a huge organ that also releases a lot of toxins. So all these practices, I think, are really essential for long-term health. And my understanding of it and my experience with it, I mean, I've been doing fasting and detox practices since 1992. I think I started. And so my experience is always about, like, how do you balance it? I've done really radical fasting, like I've dry fasted, where you don't drink anything,
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's intense.
It's intense. And, and you're dying for water. So I used to, take showers or get in the bath to try and do it. So I've like tried those things, and my experience with it and my opinion about it is as with anything, it's about how do you find the sattva, or the balance. Yeah. How do you balance that so that you're not over cleansing? Because over cleansing leads to a whole host of health problems too. Yeah. So it's about how do you balance that cleansing with the nourishment. It's always that, and things like ghee, which you think, oh, that's just saturated fat. It seems like it's just butter. But ghee is considered really useful for gently detoxifying the cells, and also healing the digestive tract from so many of the problems that occur with digestion, like leaky gut. So yeah, I think that there's it's an important, really important practice, and with the high stress kind of lifestyles that we lead in the Western world, how do we balance that with nurturing and nourishing?
Yeah, because that kind of brings me to my next question. I mean, the body obviously has its own natural detox functions. The breath is a form of detoxification with the release of CO2. The liver works nonstop to detoxify the body. So why is it that we would need to do regular seasonal detoxification?
Right. I think it's a really good question. And I think as we get older, it becomes more apparent why we need to do detox. I mean, it's just kind of obvious, but there's a couple of things. There's, yes, the body naturally detoxes, thank goodness, and but then we have on the other end, we have what we do to ourselves. I live on a street where if I just drive out of my neighborhood, there's about 7 fast food restaurants in a row: Krispy Kreme and Long John Silver's and Arby's and McDonald's. And you think about what that food does to people, so it's like the more whole foods you're eating, of course, the better. But we all do stuff, we eat out. We eat food out of cans sometimes. We eat things that might have preservatives in them or might have artificial colors, or sometimes that happens. Hopefully not that often. And then, of course, the environmental toxins, that are spewed into the environment, and that's not just the coal burning power plant that's down the street. I live in a very sort of health conscious place, but 10 miles down the road, there's a coal burning power plant that's spewing arsenic and all sorts of heavy metals into the environment, and that gets into our bodies. And And, we don't have control over things like Fukushima and the radiation that's released into the environment. And all of those things put a heavy toxic load on the system, on the liver, on the digestive system, on the lymphatic system, right? The lymphatic system is detoxing the body. So, I think we live in a society where detoxing is really necessary. You kind of can't escape it anywhere on the planet, really.
Right, yeah.
And then compounding that, which I'm going to talk about a lot in the presentation, is what I call endogenous toxins. Now, endogenous toxins are the toxins your body makes, right? So that's typically medically, it's considered the byproducts of digestion, like the bacteria overgrowth in your digestive system. But the other endogenous toxin, of course, is cortisol, which comes from stress.
Yeah, you mentioned the stress response before. Yeah,
it leaves us with a heavy toxic load. So that's why these practices become important. Now, the seasonal detox, I'm so glad we're doing this in spring, because that's what traditional medicines say, is that you come out of winter, which is a time when you're eating heavier foods and more oils and are more sedentary. And then as you move into spring, this is a great time to kind of let go of some of that toxic load so that you have revitalized energy ready to go for the summer.
Yeah. And one of the things that has always interested me about your work, most people, when they prescribe detoxification, they give you herbs that you need to take, and there's a certain diet that comes with it. But you put a lot of emphasis on, just kind of creating a subtle shift in the way you practice yoga asana.
Right.
So how did that come about? How did you develop that, or where did you learn that, and what's the principle behind it?
Well, as I said in the beginning, I mean, when you look historically at Hatha Yoga, it really was developed for detoxing. I mean, that was the whole idea behind the asanas, was to get your digestive system functioning. And that's what Ayurveda says as well. I'm not an expert in Ayurveda. I have a cursory knowledge of Ayurveda and a better knowledge of Chinese medicine. But both of those systems have a tremendous focus on digestive health. And then, my own personal journey too with my digestive issues. Personally, I'll talk about those a little bit in the second webinar. But I have a history of digestive issues, and some of that came from just having what the Ayurvedic people call a kavaguna, or a weakness in my digestive system. But also from traveling, from international travel, and acquiring parasites that really kind of destroyed my digestive system. So I've spent many years kind of figuring out how to detox and how to balance that detox with the nurturing and the nourishment that I needed to reclaim my health. And it's a process. Like I don't feel like I'm the most detoxed poster child out there. And but I also have looked at the holistic aspect of detox, and what is that urge that we have inside of us to retox or to take things in that aren't good for us? How do you surf that urge? How do you derail that urge? How do you have a supportive diet but not going overboard so that you're creating more toxicity in the system? So all of those things I've really I really think are important. Then to look specifically, because your question is about asanas, so to look specifically at asana, all of the asanas, and many of these the asanas I've learned from my teachers, my Bengali tantric teachers in India, as well as Gary Crafso, who is one of my main teachers here. And those practices that I'm showing in the videos are all about strengthening and massaging and digesting the internal organs. I mean, I'm sorry, not digesting your internal organs, but improving the digestive capacity of your internal organs,
Right.
And when you really use your breath in your asanas in a very intentional way, just breathing in asanas creates a detoxifying effect. So it's very powerful, I think, to use asanas, and it's very a very appropriate and powerful adjunct to any other detox you're doing, whether you're doing master cleanse or juice cleanses or raw diets or Ayurvedic cleanses, which those are all really different things, by the way. So whether you're doing any of those, I think the asanas and the pranayamas really complement those systems.
Yeah.
Support.
Yeah. And it's a great concept, just, the fact that in the same way as we can work on strengthening a certain muscle group, like, for example, improving core strength or improving, hip flexor strength, we also can actually affect, in a sense, the strength and efficiency of our organs by massaging, stimulating them with the way we contract the body or move the body.
One of the things that happens with our Western minds is that we default to reductionist thinking. And so in yoga, a lot of times we go right into the musculoskeletal system and we think the musculoskeletal system is the primary thing we're working with our asana practice. And I would say, like, if we back up a little bit and start looking at all of the systems in the body and how they work together as a system, then we start to understand that, when you're doing a twist and you're using your breath, like say a supine twist and you're using your breath, not only are you strengthening obliques, for example, and transverse abdominis, you're massaging digestive organs, you're also influencing the respiratory musculature, right? And you're having an influence on the neuroendocrine system because of what's going on with the spine. So there's all these things that are interweaving all the time in asana practice. And I think it's important for us to kind of expand out of a reductionist perspective that just sticks to muscles and bones.
Right. Yeah, and really appreciate that. It's really an incredible thing that you are actually able to influence the health of your organs. Yes. And it's funny because I remember Tom Myers made reference to how just the natural function of breathing makes the kidneys move.
That's right.
And he has some kind of statistic, I think it's like, almost a mile a day that the kidneys move, just because they kind of move a little bit back and forth with the breath. And of course, that kind of very gentle massage is gonna really impact how healthy the kidneys are. But most of us end up, oftentimes with a very shallow kind of habit of breathing. If we sit a lot and don't get out and exercise. So that whole link there, that yes, the organs need to move, yes, the organs need to be stimulated by the way we move. It's just something that we don't often think about, but it's very inspiring that we have that capacity.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's really inspiring that there's so much more to yoga than just stretching your hamstrings. I mean, stretching your hamstrings is great, but there's so much more,
Right.
And we can really achieve much better levels of health and thriving. When we employ these practices in that kind of intentional way. I love it. In Chinese medicine, they say the lungs, you take the qi in to the lungs, and then the kidneys have to reach up and grab the qi. You have to reach up and grab the other. So it's almost like, the kidney jogging that Tom was talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. So you have a course on YogaU on detoxification. So tell us about the course and what you're covering.
Okay, so the first module, we're going to look at practices that strengthen Agni. So we're looking at increasing the fire in the system. We're also going to talk about practices that access the relaxation response, because it's very difficult for your body to do the cleansing, restorative work it needs to do when you're in a stress state. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. And the second module is really more dedicated to the detoxification of the pranic body and also of the mind. So we're going to look at the kosha model.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, So that we're not just detoxing the physical body, we're also looking at how do you detox the pranic body, how do you detox the mind. So we'll look at some of the cognitive practices from the Yoga Sutra, and pranayamas, of course, for the pranic body. And then I'll show a little bit of acupressure, a little bit of self-massage. We'll get to do some of that in the second module as well.
Great. Yeah, and you have a couple of great video practices also that you made that really shows how to engage particularly the lower ab muscles and target a practice around facilitating those natural detox functions.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Well, we're really looking forward to it.
Me too. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. It was nice to talk to you.
You too. Take care, and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.